Let me tell you a story about politics that maybe makes this make sense. Somebody asked me, how do you deal with Republicans? Why can't Republicans get it together? I mean, let's just stop calling them conservatives. Let's just use the term we use, right? Why can't Republicans get their shit together and get in line in Congress, in the state house? Why? Why can Democrats always seem to come together and do what they need to do, and they just march along in good order? And I had to think about that for a while. And, one of the things that came to mind, when I worked for the legislature, the vast majority of the Republicans in the caucus were self-employed or white-collar CEO, C-suite level folks. They were the smartest people in the room wherever they were. Except now, we took all the smartest people in the room from around Georgia and we put them into a caucus and said, hey, you aren't the smartest guy anymore. You've got 60, 70, because I started when Tom Murphy was speaker and we were in the minority, 110, 100, whatever. Now, smart guys with smart ideas and solutions. So now your solution has to debate my solution. And oh, by the way, that guy's in charge and it's his plan. Yeah, but so it's like herding cats. That's good. It's good. That debate is good until. So I've watched an evolution in the Republican Party in Georgia. And the Republican Party in Georgia used to be focused on winning and growing. When we were in the minority, we worked hard all over this state. I worked with the state party. I worked with candidates. I worked with regions. I went to other county parties. I helped grow county parties. I helped put strategies together. Some of it volunteer and certainly some of it for pay. But we had something to fight because we were in the minority when we started. And it was hard. It was hard to fight somebody like Zell Miller. Oh, you're tough on crime? Let me be tougher. You want 3 strikes? I'm 2 strikes. Shit. Right? So we're always recalibrating. Today's Republican Party at the county level and up is complacent. It's easy. Who do you get to fight? What's the boogeyman? Well, unfortunately, the creating boogeyman. Not to say they're wrong. There are boogeymen out there. But instead of fighting the Democratic Party, they're fighting a machine. They're fighting a history. Stop. Conservative ideals are about a fundamental way to live. The Republican Party used to embrace those. We don't. We don't embrace the concepts of conservatism anymore. Limited government. I watch a legislature in Georgia that wants to continue to expand government. I don't understand that. I watch local county commissions that supposedly are Republican school boards too, that want to grow their authority, not reduce it. That's ego. And that's ego run amok. Because now we're in charge, so we're going to make it bigger. Right? And we're not going to worry about anything because we're in charge. Except what they don't realize is being in charge is slipping away. The county parties are smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's not just Cobb and Cherokee. That's everywhere. And when that happens, there's a vacuum. And in that vacuum become what I used to jokingly call the 100%ers, the purists. The ones who have no tolerance. I have zero tolerance for you about guns, abortion, schools. Pick an issue. Gay marriage. I don't care. It doesn't matter what issue. They become 100%ers. So you have a conservative movement now that is splintered and complacent. Misguided is probably an understatement. There was a time the parties were corrupt and all of those things. It's not that. Like, you want to talk about election integrity all the time, but you don't know the history of election integrity. Go look at Nathan Dean versus Jeff Mullis. Well before we had any of the machines you rail about today, in any state, this has happened. Found ballots. Yeah. Mail-in ballots have been a problem for a long time. But they're not the true boogeyman here. The system is the system. What breaks it is the immorality of man. So while you're busy talking about machines or paper ballots, or while you're bickering about how far we go in an abortion conversation or on gun regulation or lack thereof, you're missing the point. We used to be a movement, a conversation about a better society. We want smaller governments. We want strong schools. We want safe streets. We want more economic freedom. We want more business freedom. I don't hear those conversations anymore. And I think it's because people like power. They like ego fed.
Well, I want to talk on that a little bit, because the reason why I want to bring this up in particular, and again, it's not that I'm the conservative that only wants to talk bad about the conservative, because quite not. Because I'm actually proud in a lot of ways of the Conservative Party and what I've joined and things of that nature. But I have a tendency to think way down the road. When it came to military planning, you get bred to do that, right? Because you want to try and mitigate as many possible outcomes as possible so that you get your men back home. So when I look at politics, when I look at culture, when I look at the conservative culture for youth in particular, one of the things that I'm observing, and if anybody's listening to this podcast, I would ask you to listen to this part in particular, is the conservative youth don't really know what the Conservative Party is. Now, you've heard in the past, it's like, I'm a Reagan Republican, or I'm a this Republican, or I'm a Trump Republican, et cetera, et cetera. The issue with the youth is they're just saying that I am, gosh, how do I even say this? Because it's very difficult to do this. I'm anti-left culture, right?
I'm not them.
I'm not them. Yeah, it's I'm no longer identifying with a certain sect, if you will, of the Republican Party, as much as I am identifying with the ambiguous nature of the left, which is thereby creating an ambiguous nature of the right. Sure. So, now with a lot of kids, you have conversations with them, and since they don't really understand conservative ideals, i.e. what you just mentioned about economy, smaller government, et cetera, they'll venture into the idea of, to defeat left ideology, we need to create more government that mitigates leftist ideology. Sure. Which is a scary thing in itself. It's like, first it's that feeling of like satiating, like, oh yeah, we're gonna get them. It's that initial, a buzz that you get from that feeling. But then when you sit down over a cup of coffee or a bourbon, or something like that, and you think about what does that mean when you say I'm going to create government to mitigate leftist culture, you're saying that you want to expand government, which is not historically a conservative ideal.
Let's take where we are today. And I do want to come back to this more, but just on that point, let's take where we are today. We have the left in this country silencing students, silencing parents, as part of the norm now. Using law enforcement and the courts to silence them. And what I hear echoed is, yeah, but we're gonna use this instead of that to silence people. I'm a Republican and I'm gonna silence you when I get there by doing this because you're doing it that way and that way's wrong. My way to silence you because you're wrong is this. And it stops the free flow of debate. Here's one of the things we miss. Politics is a game. Governing deals with your life. Politics, it's easy to be a purist. Governing is pragmatic. And you have to make deals. You have to understand that that 60%, 70%, 51% is a win. So if you have an issue and you get 80% of what you want, what you've asked for, what you've demanded, whatever it is, that's a win. If you don't celebrate that win, you're missing the point. Because of the beauty of this country as it's structured is its pragmatic nature. Think what this country would be like if it wasn't pragmatic in the way it governs and changes under, and I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. If you're on the right, imagine if the restraints weren't there for the Obama administration or the Clinton administration. The pragmatic, slow, deal-making way this goes. And if you're on the left, think about what a Trump administration would have been like without the pragmatic deal-making that had to happen to get, hey, I want a wall and you want more access over here. Okay. But we vilify that after the campaign's over. It's just a lack of understanding. It's a lack of understanding history, government, how it works.
We'll cut off on after this part, Robert. Call it a day because you got to get on to work and all that fun stuff. But I will say this. Particularly to the youth, it was Antonio Gramsci, however you say that last name. He was an Italian Marxist. Back in the day.
He's dead. He won't care.
No, I don't think he'll care. He was probably one of the most intelligent people in terms of creating the implementation as to how Marxism could exist in the West. Sure. Because he said that, it's going to be a cultural push, and it will be a push that will be incremental, slowly but surely, and it will go into every single system that creates the West to the point where the West then begs for Marxism itself, right? You don't have to go through this revolutionary period. You quite literally just bubble it up from the ground. So, in regard to the youth, you need to understand the intelligence in that. Because what that is you need to defeat incrementalism with opposing incrementalism.
Correct.
We have to take back slowly but surely the land that has been overtaken. You don't do that by doing this gung-ho, crazy approach, because that just kind of brings a little bit of distaste, if you will, to the mouth, because people aren't ready for it. Culture's moved in a certain way. We've let culture move in a certain way. It's going to be tedious to move it back in the other way, but it's a job nonetheless that needs to be done. Robert, dude, you've opened up a whole topic that we could do a whole other podcast on.
But let me say these two things, and as we wrap up. One, that was one of the amazing parts of the conversations last year during the campaign with the college Republicans, and really just on campus in general. You guys were kind enough to invite me a number of times, was to have conversations like this about what does it mean? What are we really doing? How did we get here? And there's a lot of inquisitive thought going on college campuses, I think greater than what we see on the media. It's easy to walk out and create some clickbait TikTok nonsense of, people put on the spot with stupid answers. The other thing I would say to this is if you're interested in education and Marxism and reform and how we got here, go look at where they first targeted the soft seed planted. And I'll give you a hint. It was the teachers union. And look when they did that. And then look at the decline and look at education as a whole and the arc in this country of education and how we got here. I think the path is really clear if people look at it. The problem is people don't want to look past little Johnny's elementary class. They just want to see that. They don't want to know how they got here.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for coming in, man. Thank you for expressing your testimony. Seriously, no, I do appreciate it, and I really hope my listeners get something from it. Right? I want to thank you for talking about change and what change can do and what it looks like in terms of an incremental progressive movement. Right? Using the P word here, buddy. Cheers. It was such a pleasure having you. Robert, have a good one, man.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.